Okay, everyone. Again, my name's Scott from Endeavour Solutions, GP Support North. Thank you for attending today. Thank you for sticking with us. For those that attended late, you're right on time. We're going to be talking about GP Cloud's hosting today and building a business case together. Our agenda, we have 40 minutes. I booked off for an hour. We're probably going to go for about a half an hour. We talk about what is the cloud, some analogies around cloud hosting and cloud options, and ultimately finish up with pricing scenarios and a business case. So let's look at the GP roadmap. It was updated this summer to extend past the year 2028. We moved from a fixed life cycle to a modern life cycle, really a glorified marketing change for taking out the year and just calling it Dynamics GP. So we know which version of GP we're now using, starting at GP 2018, 18.1, 18.2, 18.3, 18.4. With this in mind, there's a lot of greater safety, overcoming any kind of uncertainty and doubt. GP is here to stay. So if you're going to be staying with GP, let's find the best way to support your staff. And supporting your staff is having GP, and you may want to augment it with additional ISV or third-party applications, and some of those may be cloud applications. There's great cloud applications for payroll and time entry. Ceridian and ADP are large players in Canada as well as US. Microsoft 365 is all cloud-based applications, and Office 365 being part of that. ISV applications, we've worked with a number of clients with cloud-based AP automation, accounts receivable automation, payment processing, expense management, all in the cloud. FP&A, financial planning and analysis, business intelligence, reporting, also great cloud applications that would connect into GP, either on-premise or if we put GP in the cloud, just connecting back and forth to each other. Dynamics 365 CRM and Power Apps can also talk with Dynamics GP, and then cloud hosting and backup options as well. So what is the cloud? The cloud is a third-party data center, a bundle of services, security, managing infrastructure, making sure that everything is providing a high availability to the stability of your Dynamics GP system as well as to your user experience. GP is not cloud software. It's server-based software. It belongs on a server. It used to come, sitting in your data center or even under someone's desk, and now can be moved up into the cloud. And again, it's just another third-party data center. We're calling it the cloud. There are some GP providers out there that have a rental and try to treat it like a SaaS software where you only get to view the front end. You don't get access to your databases, or you get access to virtual databases. You're not involved for doing upgrades, for server migrations, for other components. Endeavour also supports Business Central. Business Central is a software as a service cloud-based application. It is based on Dynamics Nav, an old server-based application, however, has been completely rewritten, transformed, and is a full cloud accessible only through a browser, no rich client. And for Business Central, we can help those that want to move in that direction. Today's focus is stay on GP. The user experience is the same for on-premise or cloud. So if you move GP into the GP cloud, whether that be Microsoft Azure or a private cloud hosting provider, your users are accessing GP through remote desktop services, formerly known as terminal server. Prior to the pandemic and COVID, most of our clients would have once in a while remote access. With the advent of the pandemic and work from home options, we're finding majority, if not all clients, are using remote desktop services. That does provide additional stronger servers and software that needs to be put in place. If you move to GP Cloud, the user experience is going to be the same. A point here I have is Microsoft 365 Business Premium or Enterprise 3 or Enterprise 5. Those are the Microsoft versions of Office 365 that will work on a remote desktop / terminal server. If you don't have those in place, you're using Gmail or a different version of Office 365 or a different version of Microsoft Office 2016 or 2019. The process would be to save off of your remote desktop onto your actual computer's desktop and then open the file from there. So let's do a comparison, look at old, then into new and cloud. IT hardware, if you've implemented Dynamics GP 10, 15 years ago, you may have been upgrading each year with each time you do a different GP upgrade. Is your hardware older and slower? The firewalls and security are often potentially weak or unknown. GP and even sort of mid-sized companies haven't been large targets, but as the world is globalizing and cybersecurity threats are emerging stronger and stronger, they also have bots that are looking for these open access points, especially if you're exposing through remote desktop or using the web client or granting remote access to your servers. They're now exposed to easier access by cyber threats. Looking at backups for those that are really old, they may be on tape, they may be on-site, maybe off-site, obviously. And looking at the pricing of on-premise software, there's a capital expenditure. You have to buy the physical servers, buy the rack, and then there's variable components around your monitoring. So if we look at going to a new on-premise, doing your upgrades, there's now new, faster processors, there's solid state drives, there's virtual machines, everything works faster and better. There's greater control, there's lots of extra tools for your IT staff to monitor. And if you compare those to the cloud, same thing. Faster processors, solid state drives, virtual machines, same or better for controls, greater focus on remote desktop, and obviously cloud is 100% remote desktop. And then security. So within your organization and within most organizations is this new mantra called zero trust. And the zero trust is really trust no one. Mandate security passwords are changed all the time. Start using multi-factor authentication, which is GP 20, we'll call it 2021, or GP 18.3 and now 18.4 are fully supporting multi-factor authentication when connected to Office 365 and that seamless experience. Obviously, security, you need user training, and that's going to be the same if it's on-premise or cloud if you want to do things right. If we look at backups, there's on-site storage, but there's also off-site cloud storage, and we recommend looking at these off-site cloud storage options. Very easy to do that in connecting to GP and doing a backup onto Azure. At minimum, at least do your backups up into Azure. Pricing's $50 a month to up to $400 a month, depending on how fancy you want to get. For the business case, we used $100 a month, and that is pretty much in line with what the average customer would need. If we look at the pricing, obviously new on-premise, you're going to need increased capital expenditure to buy new hardware, new virtual machines, new solid state drives, and obviously a lot of new and additional IT effort. If we look to move that over to the cloud, we're moving from a on-premise capital expenditure into a monthly fee where it's a fixed fee. So just to recap, hardware between new on-premise and new clouds can be better firewalls, better desktop experience, better security, better cloud backups. On-premise or in the cloud, it's going to be the same. And then we're able to move capital expenditures into a monthly variable fee. So before we get too much further into the pricing, I want to look at a quick analogy for the cloud. And it's really around who's accepting the risk. What is the cost? So the analogy I like to use, and that I've borrowed this from others, is I need to deliver packages. I need a service that's going to deliver packages to a customer. What do I need? I need a driver and a truck. So you look on Bing, you look on Google, what kind of truck do you want? Same thing with GP cloud hosting. You want to work with the experts at Endeavour, at GP Support North, within our team, and say, okay, what is the best option, There's so many options out there. And when do I need fire suppression? What do I need? One with a tank mounted to the back? Do I need a big truck, small truck? Is it rusty? Does it need to have a logo? There's a variety of options. So we take this analogy and we look at your on-premise staff. So on-premise, you need to deliver that package. It's going to be your driver, which is your IT staff and employees. It's going to be your truck. You may own, you may lease a truck, you may rent your truck. But you're on the hook for all the maintenance, the hiring, the firing, training of the staff, and utilization. Am I getting the most use of this truck? Are we experts in owning trucks? Are we a trucking company or are we not? And then we look at the public cloud being Microsoft Azure, via Endeavour. This is sort of like your UPS driver. It's a service. You may get a shelf. There may be other clients on the same truck. They are a large organization with many trucks, very little risk of bankruptcy, but you are paying more on a usage fee. Also, your control and influence over them is potentially less depending on what versions and how you're setting up. You know, if you want to have a legal case against Microsoft, good luck with that. Obviously, we would recommend and plan to never get into those situations. We do have a private cloud also available through Endeavour, hired driver, hired truck, the great quality of the truck and driver, and there's a variety of options. There are other providers that do GP cloud hosting outside of Endeavour. Obviously, we prefer to use our recommended providers and our approaches because our support desks are already working together and have that collaboration. We look at extra SLA options using the truck analogy. Are there specialized stuff that we need? Do we want to mandate that there's certain minimum standards that are being met? Are they changing the oil? Do they have backup drivers? Are they doing inspections? And that's where some of these security standards, SOC 2 being one of them, to say, is the infrastructure and do they have the processes in place? For our recommended private cloud, the answer is yes to all of those. And what I want to show to you is private cloud through our private cloud hosting provider, or looking at putting Microsoft Dynamics GP on Azure via Endeavour. And then a second Azure option, which is putting GP on Azure through Endeavour, but for clients who already have an Azure environment or planning to do other workloads, other applications, other servers in Azure. And there's a cost difference to that, and I'll go through that. So look at the performance needs. It's going to meet your performance. Everything's new and modern. GP is going to run well. If you wanted to run absolutely amazing, you want the Porsche version of all your hosting, the answer is going to be maybe. And on Azure, also maybe. Very cost prohibitive if you're just running GP on Azure. The faster the servers and virtual machines, the greater the cost is going to be. If you have other workloads, then you're amortizing, spreading that cost against multiple workloads. And again, we have sort of that maybe for absolutely amazing performance. But for what you need and to meet your user needs, everything is covering it just fine. We look at the financial charges. So the GP, the private cloud, is a fixed fee per named user. So if you have six concurrent users, but there are 8 named users, then you have to pay for those 8 named users. If you look at GP on Azure, that's a monthly fee for stacks up on the number of servers that you have, the storage, the backups, all the components together. And then there's a variable component based on consumption and usage. We can even dial it around time of day usage, slow it down at night, build it back up after that. Backup and recovery included with the GP private cloud. For backups on Azure, same as on-premise. And then there's this concept of overage. It's a consumption fee. How much have you used? How often have your users access the system? Are you running big reports? Is there more data back and forth between the system? How the backups handled? So there's this consumption aspect. And then there's also the ability to, are you spinning up additional Azure environments? Are you creating a sandbox and another sandbox, and how those are handled? So within the private cloud, there's really no risk. Everything is, you have that nice contained fixed free cost. Within Azure just running GP and assuming your IT staff are novice, yes, there's a risk of having some greater overages. If you have existing workloads within Azure, I would say it would be less risk. So you look at the pricing, moderate, higher, and lower. So putting GP on Azure, if you have a bunch of other Azure components, is probably going to be the most cost effective. If not, probably the GP private cloud. So let's look at GP private cloud. This information has been on our website. We have held pricing static for the last 3 years. I think it's going to go up soon, just because 3 years of inflation, of added security, added hardware upgrades by our provider, all of those components is putting an upward pressure on the pricing. For our business case, we're going to be using the 8 users. Look at 16 users as the pricing's here. The nice thing is you double the number of users, you're not doubling your cost. If we get up to 32 users, we'll talk about that later on in the business case, but you're not doubling the cost or tripling the cost or quadrupling the cost. So there's definitely efficiencies as you get larger. And that's where you do have some competitive providers providing dirt cheap hosting. It's because they're putting everyone on the same box, but there's too much risk. There's too many headaches that are really involved in that. We recommend a private cloud, private for you, either private in Azure or private through our provider. So let's look at Azure. Again, I wanted to talk about there's 2 options. First option, and we're going to use 8 users, 8 named users as our comparability, and we'll get in if you have more users or less users or how that looks. But with Microsoft Azure and putting Dynamics GP on Azure, we are gold certified. We've done it for a number of clients, and all the Microsoft components are all in place. You need 3 servers. You can try to get away with less, but really the recommended approach is 3 servers. Those are 3 virtual machines, and that's where the pricing gets higher on Azure because each virtual machine has a cost to it. You got the GP server, the SQL server, and then another one for terminal server, remote desktop, Active Directory, putting that together. As I mentioned, backup and recovery options. If you're on premise, I highly recommend you back up and create a recovery process into Azure. You can work with the Endeavour GP Support North support desk, and we can get that set up and talk to you about your options, ranging from $50 to $400 per month. Typically $100 per month will get you what you need, and we're using that for the business case. With Azure, you must have some IT knowledge. Otherwise, you need to rent someone with IT knowledge. If you don't have the IT knowledge to manage your Azure environment, it's going to cost you probably $400 to $600 a month for a managed service plan for someone to monitor and manage that for you. Looking at 8 users, the pricing here, $1,300 or $800, because there's a lot of efficiencies if you have other workloads within GP. So I'm showing you all this. Let's get into the business case. Here is a pretty business case, built it in an Excel, looking to amortize it over 48 months, just to create a comparability of on-premise to cloud, and you can see the numbers at the bottom. Let me zoom in, and then we'll go together, build this back, and look at the summary. So, time-wise, we're looking great. Thank you for staying with me here. On-premise, we want to buy a new on-premise server. I worked with our IT staff. We went on to the Dell site, did checks and balances, found everything that was sort of ideal for 8-user system, and the price ranges were all around 20 grand. But there's an assumption that you're not buying full retail. There's always promotions and specials. Sometimes you can get down to cutting corners into your 15 grand. We use 18,500 for a new on-premise server and a variety of other tools. It also assumes you have a data center and have a rack. If you're a brand new startup, it's going to cost you a fortune to build a proper data center. There is a variable component. Obviously, we're amortizing the infrastructure over a 4-year period. Variable is monthly, so divided by 12. But you're looking at monthly cost, including your electricity and cooling, $540 a month for on-premise. If you have free IT staff, great, you're fine. If you want to capture your labor costs or setup costs, IT staff monitoring, it's fair to assume an hour a day on average. So some days maybe, you may be monitoring every 2 days, you may skip your weekends. It's going to work out, and we're using $40 an hour as sort of your cost of an IT staff to be following this along. If you're outsourcing those IT staff, cost is going to be higher more often than not. It depends on utilization. There's also response times, so that's also including putting in patches into your Microsoft network, dealing with issues where there's a hiccup, something went wrong, there's an alert from the monitoring software that someone has to deal with. And then training. Training is needed for security training, for just general keeping up to speed on what's the latest in Microsoft. Windows Server 2019, the new Windows Server 2021 is going to be coming out, SQL Server new ones are going to be coming out, and just understanding and knowing that. Obviously looking at hosting, that's going to be comparing to the next column, and that backup recovery. Highly recommend have an Azure backup. We're using $100 a month here. You can get it down to 50, or we can blow the bank for amazing high-end backups. Putting that across, you're looking at over $2,000 a month for GP, hosting it internally on premise with new great hardware and security. If we compare that to the private cloud, obviously your infrastructure needs are included. Your one-time setup, as per shown on the website, slightly higher if we had 16 or 32 users, and slightly lower if you're 0 to 5 users. Those are named users. So if someone just accesses it periodically, there is a cost to that. If you're using a limited license versus the full Dynamics GP user, there are discounts for there. It doesn't need the same assumptions. Put this together, basically it's $1,100 per month, and then you amortize setup fee over your 48 months. You're basically $1,100 a month ongoing for that. If we compare it to Azure Cloud, there's some assumptions that we have here. Again, hardware is going away, and we have two options. The GP sitting on Azure Cloud through Endeavour, but just running GP. These are your costs you're looking at. If you're adding other workloads on GP, you already have on Azure, you already have Microsoft Azure up and running, you're running other systems, other storage, other applications, then we're making some assumptions that there's going to be some cost savings. So if we look at this, there's a setup fee. We assume the setup's going to be faster if you already have Azure running. Their virtual machines are fairly quick. You're a half day at a time rather than a full day of effort. The monitoring, we're going to assume it's half of what the on-premise monitoring would be, 50%. And we just took the on-premise, divided by 2, and there's definitely some monitoring that you need to have in place in managing your Azure environment. We're going to assume that monitoring goes away and it's just part of a broader monitoring that you're doing if you already have workloads and your IT staff already understand Azure and working with Azure. We look at the hosting, there's some hosting efficiencies as well in terms of the size and power of the machines, the storage costs, the backup costs, etc. And if we look at the overages, we're also assuming there's going to be fewer consumption overages because you have your environment that much more optimized. Still some components, and there's a blending between the monthly hosting and what we're calling consumption or overage. Again, same backup. Backup doesn't change. Backup might actually be a little bit less because storage fees go down as you have additional backup components, and we're just going to keep that the same for comparability. And if we look at this, we're at $1,700 a month, which is getting quite costly. You're into your 30 grand for a year of hosting GP on Microsoft Azure, and obviously quite a bit less if we're have other workloads in place. So let's pull all these pieces together. And again, we look at the infrastructure. We had on-premise, and there was a hardware cost. We have a monthly fee that we sort of amortized our hardware and costs over a 48-month period. But we're assuming you have labor related to the monitoring, related to the security. And if you think of, if you wanted to get in your own GP cloud hosting business, you would have to buy all these people to be able to include it in a service that you offer to others. One-time setup, And then we have our $1,100 a month for our 8 named users. The GP in Azure really doesn't matter how many users you have. These specs and costing are set for equivalent to 8, but you're not charged per user. You're just going to be charged a flat per month, with the exception of these potential overages that may happen from time to time. I also want to talk about the ballparks. So, interestingly enough, if you are going to double and look at 16 users, now these are ballpark estimates. As you see at the top, everything's an educated guess. Your needs may differ. For 16 users, you're doubling, but it's going to be 1.75, so not 2 times the cost. Same if you double once again, so you're quadrupling the number from 8 users to 32. You're not 4 times the cost. You're going to be a little bit less than 3 times the cost. There's efficiencies in size. There's also the assumption that all 32 users aren't all heavy users. And that's a risk return that the GP cloud provider that we use takes, and does not change your price. And if you need more speed, they're able to accommodate that within reason. And again, if you want to get to that Porsche level, amazing speed, yes, there's additional costs, but there is flexibility to provide those levels of performance. So to recap, on-premise, looking at our business case for Dynamics GP server-based software, sitting up on a third-party server, being the cloud, or in-house. In-house, if you have free staff, it's going to be the cheapest amounts. If you need to recognize the cost of those staff, it's going to be more expensive than cloud. The private cloud has a contained cost. Client bills are the exact same every single month for the next 3 to 4 years. If you have 5 users, it's actually even less. And as I mentioned, if you're up into the 16 users, 20 users, 32, anything over 16 users is sort of a customized quote, because there's always additional complexities that come into it, but it's not going to be double, triple, quadruple the price depending on the number of users. We look at a GP on Microsoft Azure. You buy it through Endeavour. If it's just GP on Azure, it's going to be costly. If you have other workloads on Azure, it will cost less than the private cloud. You're taking on those risks though. So remember, back to our truck, you have to do the monitoring. You're getting a service, but there's different components involved. And I got the ballparks there. So looking at time, we're very good. I'll put some, open up the questions so when we get into that component. For those that are new to Endeavour or GP Support North, or those that have been with us for 20 or more years, just to recap on how we've evolved over our 32 years in business. Advisory services, the business process design, helping you get more out of your systems. You may have implemented GP a number of years ago, and there's opportunities to take advantage of new features and functions that have been released, new enhancements, and be able to match how your business has also evolved over that time. So we have those advisory services, obviously the implementation and ongoing support for all those components, and call our support desk. Our core values of integrity, trust, and accountability are fantastic. It's great to work at Endeavour. We actually won a Great Place to Work award. We've hired additional 14 staff in the last year to support our growth in Business Central and Dynamics Nav, and they have really gravitated to us and are working with us with that integrity, trust, and accountability. Looking at the certifications, we are gold certified for cloud solutions. That's all the Dynamics 365 cloud applications, Business Central, CRM, Power Apps. We're gold certified for ERP, Dynamics GP, as well as Nav and Business Central. Data analytics, not silver, gold for all your reporting needs, data warehouse, data marts, Power BI, all those components together, SSRS, SQL Server. Gold cloud platform, that's the Azure practice. So we're not basic at Azure, we're not silver, we're gold level for Azure. We know what's going on, and those inputs came in from the consultants for these business cases that we looked at. And then gold cloud productivity is the Microsoft 365 and other cloud components. So next steps, reply to your webinar invite. Those go to myself. I can connect you with the right people, or reach out to Trish, James, or Steve, and we're happy to help you get more out of your systems, help you stay and thrive and enjoy and add value to your organization with Dynamics GP. If there is a business case to move from GP to Business Central, it's a hefty migration, a retraining, rebuilding of all your reports, and we have the talent, the team, and the experience to take you there if that's where you choose to go. So thank you very much. Just going to leave it back up on the screen for the last few minutes. If there's any questions, Smart Connect. Yes, Smart Connect is supported. Smart Connect can sit on your Azure cloud, or it can sit on the private cloud, or there's a new version of Smart Connect that is cloud-based and can be used to basically sit in its own cloud, so you don't have to pay for Azure hosting to hold Smart Connect, and then you can do Smart Connect to Azure into your other applications. That'll be a good point to discuss with our team. And yes, Smart Connect works, as well as most of the ISVs. If you have a heavy use ISV where there's a lot of document storage, say you're doing, you're trying to use QuickTag and you want to store all those documents on your server, that's going to increase your hosting cost. Preferred to be used the QuickTag cloud version, where they manage and hold all of that storage. Same with reporting in data warehouses. Management Reporter obviously works great. If you're using Management Reporter with the BI, then there's going to be hosting and storage costs to that. Or you look at one of the cloud-based corporate reporting packages that we work with, and those cloud-based ones handle all that storage and data manipulation up in their clouds, which actually may be Azure or AWS in the background anyways. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.